So at this point, obviously, we've talked a little bit about spreads. We've built up a couple of techniques, but we haven't really applied them to any questions. So what we're going to now do is we're going to come up with some client scenarios, some scenarios which someone might ask. Now you need to be really careful with the sort of questions that you're asking and you're going through into the cards. Generally speaking, you want specific questions, because a specific question will result in a specific answer. A vague question will result in a vague answer. And although you can delve deeper into the aspect, what a lot of people will come and ask you is they'll say, oh, can you tell me what happens next week? And it's like, well, we'd need to do quite a few spreads. Next week, okay, 7 days in a week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you could take the approach of each day and then going through one by one and giving a little bit of detail per each day. But in reality, what you need to think about is, really, is that what you want? You just want to know roughly what's going on in the week. Is there anything actually that they do want to know? Is it only a specific day of the week that you want to go into? Obviously, we've kind of alluded to the fact that more than likely people will ask this sort of thing. And it's quite a good one, I suppose, to get started, but we want to get you to the point where you give them really, really detailed answers. So if you're spending 30 minutes on a tarot reading, then you may have a certain amount of time to delve into certain options. But if that client's got a specific question in mind, generally they often do, they just don't want to tell you. So what I want to cover actually first of all is one thing that we like to say, and that is something that I learned from that TV show Dr. House, Gregory House, the horrible doctor. He always says everyone lies. So every person lies. So generally speaking, when clients come, they often do know what they want. They're either unwilling to tell you, they are willing to tell you, we like those clients, or they don't know. So what we should focus on before we start answering the question is what question we should actually ask the cards in the first place. So good questions are questions which you can give quite specific answers to. Bad questions are extremely vague questions. Now what I like to do is, whilst the client's asking a question, or whilst the client's thinking about the question, is I like to shuffle the cards and I like to ask myself, and you can just say, oh, I'm just warming up or whatever. You can ask yourself, what the heck does this person really want to know? And then just pull 1 or 2 or 3 cards. I'd get used to begin with, you could just pull 3, because finding the imagery in one card, some people find it really easy to just stick with 1 card. When people use 2 cards, what they'll often find is they'll struggle between which is the dominant one, which is the submissive one. So if you've got 2 that kind of contradict each other, it's like a best out of 3 scenario with this. This is why I did the previous exercise, why we went into which one's the dominant, which one's the submissive, which one's the supporting kind of element. Because very often, depending on the type of spread you use, which again, I don't really use 2 card spreads all that much, because I get a lot of information from 1 card, and then if I need more information, then okay, I might use 1, but if you're in a real struggle, 2 out of 3, you're bound to get there then. So basically, again, what is the question that that person actually wants? So if we're assuming that we're going to go for the free cards, what we're going to do is we're going to blend these free cards that we pick together to form an opinion of what that person is actually all about. So what is the overriding theme here based on the person? Now, at the moment, we're not actually applying a question and there's no actual person in front of us. So again, we can't really get this wrong. This is just an example and some practice. Just another exercise really at the end of the day. So don't worry about whether you come up with different situations to what I come up with, because we're not really picking up on any specific energy. We're not really picking up on any particular client or question. So at this point, the chances are we're not going to have the same answers. But again, someone comes in, they're thinking, you know, what is it I want to ask, blah de blah, or they start going off on one and talking about a load of random crap, and you're kind of thinking, come on, get to the point, what question do you want to ask? Well, during that time you're going to be shuffling the deck and you might pick a couple of cards just for yourself. You don't reveal the information, you just keep it to yourself. And this kind of comes up. Person's feeling stuck, they don't really know what to do, they want some clarity. Okay, so why am I getting to that conclusion? Well, this person's hanging from a tree. You could argue that he put himself in the situation. Did he put himself in the situation? Who knows? This reminds me of a wheel. So this is the Wheel of Fortune, but it reminds me of a kind of one of those spinning wheels or a roulette wheel. So when we go from this kind of situation and then we've got this stagnant person, the person that's at the end, but they look quite content and they've got something and they're surrounded by quite nice things, quite nice nature things. So for me, I'm thinking that the person really just wants to get to the point where they don't feel so stuck and reliant on whims and gambling, not gambling as in money, but just letting what happens happen to them and actually come and be a bit more stable. So what this person wants is they want to get from being confined and at the mercy of the elements and anything that's around them to a point where they're stable and in control. So I feel that the reading is going to be reflected on getting them to that point. So at that point, what I might decide to do is to just put these to one side. So I haven't really necessarily involved the client too much. They're yabbering, or you know, they're sorting out their, I don't know, purse, sitting down, maybe you're making them a cup of tea, something like that. But I've put those to one side and that's the information that I've basically gotten. So this is sometimes called a pre-spread work. Very often you won't necessarily need to do this as you advance. However, many a time, much like at a doctor's surgery, when the patient comes in and says, doctor, I'm feeling a little bit funny, and the doctor spends 10 minutes of the 12 minutes that they've allocated them for their checkup or for their, you know, meeting, and then the doctor goes into, you know, how are you feeling, blah de blah, and then they're just about to go and they turn to the doctor and say, well, actually there's a funny rash on me junk. And that was the real reason why they came there, and they wasted the majority of the appointment talking about something and going into something because they were too embarrassed to ask what they really meant. So pre-spread work will help you not only understand what the client actually wants, but it will also help you to start tapping into their energy, their thought process, their feeling. Now, obviously, as and when you build more and more psychically, you will pick up on emotions, you'll pick up on feelings, you'll pick up on lots of things, sometimes even thoughts from the other person. So a lot of the time when you get to the point, obviously, eventually, you won't really need the cards anyway to do any form of reading. But the sinking in to the client's energy, There are different techniques to that, but again, because this is a tarot course, I'm going to teach you the way to do it with the tarot. And it is simply a case of, you know, we've got this person that hasn't asked their question yet, but maybe they're coming in and they're kind of stumbling about, or they're nervous or whatever, and you think, oh, I get the impression this person might not know what they want. Or maybe they're one of those people, maybe a skeptic or something, that's just like, well, I want to come because I want to try this out, but I don't really know how it works, sort of thing. Then maybe you can offer up some insight as to a question they might want to ask before they even ask it. You'd be a good psychic if you can do that. So there we go, pre-spread. Before they ask the question, thinking to them, or getting an idea of the general what's going on here. Now there was, I'm not going to say the name of the person because I don't particularly like her, but there was an American witch, and she used to do tarot readings. And in America, in certain places, at the time, so this was a little while ago, the police used to go in undercover and try and basically arrest psychics for fraud and that sort of thing. And an undercover female police officer went to have a reading with this somewhat famous female witch, and she did almost like this, a syncing of the energy, and she just kept getting bondage and handcuffs. And then lo and behold, the person was an undercover police officer that came in to try and trip them up. So it's one of those things that this might work in your favour. But anyway, pre-spread, getting to know the client, syncing to their energy, pulling a couple of cards. You can pick 3, or you could just pick 1. Okay, so in which case, if I've got the same client in mind, we've gone from the feeling of helplessness to being at the whims of everything in nature and the world with no real way of dealing with it, you know. Washing away with the tide, or flowing with the breeze like a flag. You're not in control of your situation, but you want control of the situation. This, you want some form of enlightenment. So if I just picked 1 card instead of 3, then I might pick up on this and just look at it. What does this person want? What's their current state of mind? You can ask several questions along the same lines, and then things will come to you. This seems like the divine enlightenment, you know. This is a hand reaching from the cloud. What is this hand? Is it an angel? Is it God? Whatever you believe it is, the divine, a higher power, it doesn't matter. But when I'm thinking of coins, I'm thinking of, well, money, that sort of thing is in the real world. So is this specifically saying that, okay, this client wants some sort of not inspiration, but they want some sort of guidance to do with physical matters or worldly matters, or perhaps they need guidance with finances. I mean, one of those things that comes with real world matters. A lot of the time, the suit of Pentacles often will deal with, or it says that they deal with physical worldly matters. Now again, we will go into different things in detail in the future, but each suit often is said to represent different aspects. So, you know, whether it be whatever you call this, coins or pentacles, you might find that it has a specific, the suit has a specific meaning. I probably will just go into them. If you're talking element wise, so if you think of like the 4 classical elements, earth, fire, water and air, you've got the coins or pentacles would be earth, so earthly matters. You've got I was going to say rods, some people call it rods, but sticks or wands. You've got air. You've got the swords would be fiery, and then you've got the goblet chalices as a kind of water, because at the end of the day, goblets and chalices, they hold liquid, don't they? So again, you don't need to read into too much of that, but the more detail that you have, whether it's a general impression or the more you bond with the cards and discover their meanings, the more information that's going to come through. So whatever works best for you, pick the one card. Again, some people may even decide to just pick the card to represent the client and stick it to one side. I've even known people to actually say, before you ask your question, I'm going to pick your card that represents you. So if I pulled a card to represent this imaginary client, I might pick this. And then I may be drawn to the card. I'll look at the card and think, what is this client? Well, for me, this client is the tiniest little person in the bottom there. The despair on their, you know, they're sad. You might think that the client might be this. You might be drawn to that. You might get an overall impression that sums the client up. It doesn't matter. But what I might do is put that to the side. And as I'm asking questions or as we're delving into things, I might glance back at that being the client. And I might think, well, you know, how does this, what they've told me, apply to this person that I've seen here? Or how is my impression changing of this card based on what else I've picked up or what's come up on the reading? Again, we're going into slightly more specific things. But what I'm going to do is, if you have a little go at playing around with pre-card card spreads, and if you've got someone there that you can practice on, then do that. If not, then what I suggest you do is to do it on yourself. And to say, not necessarily what am I all about, or you could, you know, that might be interesting, to look into a card and say, which card, what am I? Am I the hard worker that puts so much effort in and never gets any reward for it? Who am I? So yeah, you could do that. Again, you could pick a card that selects yourself, or what represents yourself if you're going for the one card thing. Or you could select a card or a couple of cards that would be, okay, what question should I be asking? What question should Liam ask? Liam should ask why he's so upset, maybe. I'm not really upset, but you know. Liam should ask if I'm picking three and associating them together. Liam should ask, what journey do I have to take to become victorious and get what I want? So what is that? What question am I asking? Well, it's all about the journey to success. So from that, I might think, well, what do I need to do to be successful at what I want to do? And then that might be my question. Okay, I've now got a question. How am I going to be successful? How am I going to get from there to there? What do I have to do? What are the steps? That may be the question that I ask the psychic. Or if I'm doing it for myself, I ask the cards. Do myself. So pre-spread, we're starting at the beginning, technically pre-beginning, because we haven't even done the tarot reading yet or ask the question. So there we go. We're going to keep this imaginary person and then we're going to do a reading. Okay, so let's skip to the next video. If you want to have a little mess around with the things that I've told you, I do suggest you do, then go ahead and do that now before you go to the next video.